This conference will now be recorded.
The conference will be recorded. I don't know if you all could hear that. Thank you for joining the City of Kingston's Complete Streets Advisory Council meeting. My name is Kristen Wilson. I am a staff support along with, Greg is really your core staff support, but I'm helping with this and organizing for today's virtual meeting. Before we begin our meeting, I just want to go over a few guidelines to help us navigate the system as efficiently and respectfully as possible. We ask that members of the public remain muted and off camera for the length of the meeting. And as the organizer, I reserve the right to mute anyone who unmutes themselves. Council members and city staff will control their own mute button. Good practice would be to mute yourself if you're not speaking to avoid background noise and feedback. And if a council member or staff wishes to speak, they'll raise their hands. And I'm going to have Bob sort of facilitate that once we get going. The chairperson will call on them before they speak by stating their name clearly for our audio listeners. All of our meetings are recorded. Both video and written transcriptions will be made available to the public on the city's website at a later date. And although we won't have the public speaking tonight, well, Bob might have the public be able to speak at the beginning of the meeting. But even still, you could submit written comments to, I'm going to say to Greg Krupp at gkrupp at kingston-ny.gov, or you can drop them off at the drop box located outside the side door of City Hall. And we encourage everybody to reach out to committee chairs. If you have any audio issues, you can send a text number or text message to 845-309-6147. That's 845-309-6147. That's my phone number, and I'll see if I can get it worked out. And as the organizer for today's meeting, I reserve the right to lock and pause the meeting to eject anyone who has behaved inappropriately. And lastly, at today's meeting, we have in attendance Bob Dennison, the chair. We have Claudette Ford. She's Complete Streets Advisory Council member. Andy Turk-11, member. John Grossbolin, member. Greg Krupp, support staff. Patrick O'Reilly is our liaison to the Common Council. Sarah Wank is a member. And Emily Flynn is staff support. And if I did not call your name, can you unmute yourself? Oh, Lorraine, I think, said earlier that she was on. Lorraine, do you want to unmute yourself? I'm going to unmute you and you can.
Yeah, you know, I'm terrible at technology. I'm doing this on my home phone, so I have no idea how to mute myself or not, but hopefully you won't hear anything untoward. I don't have any dogs or anything, so okay.
Well, there's also a chat box that let's see. Lorraine, are you only on your phone or are you also on the computer?
Well, I have a computer here, but I have a Chromebook. I don't want to bore you all with this stuff, but I cannot do apps and stuff on this thing, so.
Okay, well, I'm just going to keep only you unmuted because I can't see you, and hopefully there won't be too much background noise.
Okay.
So thank you for everybody for your patience during these difficult times, and on behalf of the city, I wish you and your family good health. And for now, I turn the floor over to the chair, Bob Dennison. So Bob, I'm going to unmute you.
Okay, does this work? Does this work? People can actually hear me?
Yep.
You have to make a motion because I can't hear you. So all right, let's open. We have a quorum. So I expect this meeting will not go nearly as long as it's scheduled for, given that much isn't going on right now in the world. And I suppose we'll open up with welcome guests and public comment. And Lorraine would be our only guest. And I don't know if you have any comments, any public comment.
No, I don't, Bob. Thank you.
Okay. So the next item is the review and approval of the minutes from the February meeting. They were posted. Good job, Greg. You've really kept us up to date with your keeping our materials posted and current. Has anybody got any corrections on our or revisions to the minutes? If you do, indicate, I don't know, wave or whatever, or shake your head or do something demonstrative. I can't see Andy and I can't see Claudette, so I don't know if you'll have to speak up if you've got something.
Look good to me.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to accept the minutes.
Motion.
Do I have a second? Sarah. Okay. So,
Second it.
okay, any discussion? Okay, then I'll look for a vote. All those in favor,
Aye.
wave your hand or whatever. All those opposed, wave any abstentions. Okay, the minutes are accepted. That's a little awkward, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to move on to old business. Project update discussion. It's been posted. There's a lovely new thing on the website that I was looking at earlier today. Looks like the Broadway project is going to start shortly. That'll be interesting. The roundabout's underway. I don't know if there's anything that you want to add, Kristen, to what has not been, people won't know by looking at the postings. Is there anything you want to add?
Well, I haven't done a very recent update to all of the projects except for Broadway. I did put on a new construction update. If you go to the Broadway Streetscape page, you can click on a link there. It'll bring you to construction updates. It's a little wonky at the moment because I had some issues with the back end of the website, but we are posting 2-week updates that say what the contractors are doing. And I put a picture yesterday of the sidewalk that was removed near in front of UPAC, so you can take a look. Yeah, the Broadway is underway. They're doing quite a bit. They're excavating sidewalk, probably as we speak.
Which, it's a great, they really, here's the bright side of our pandemic. From a construction projects perspective, the reduction in traffic, both pedestrian and vehicular, is a benefit. That's going to help us move this project more rapidly. The same with the roundabout project. So that's the one good part of this. We should be able to move it without with minimizing the pain, because there's a lot of people who are not out and on the sidewalks and driving their cars. So hopefully that'll help them make their schedule, or even sooner. As we all know, the sooner they're done, the more money they make. So this will motivate them to go quickly. So that's a good thing. Anything else that we want to talk about project-wise?
I don't know if it was, excuse me. I don't know if it was in the updates that Christian does, but I noticed that they're working on the Empire State Trail on 32. They've cut the brush back. It looks like they started some drainage work over there, and they took all the trees down, along 32. Looks like the whole right of way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's good. That'll be, yep.
There's 2 places where we're still trying to work out on our website. There's 2 places to get updates. If you go to the very home page, it says service news, and then it says roadwork update, week of April 13th. So that's where we're putting the updates for all the projects, construction updates. And so you should be able to find out about things that are going on everywhere in the city, and some of them are Central Hudson projects and sewer projects. So yeah, and the Empire State Trail on Route 32 and Greenkill Avenue has started. So
again, that'll be an exciting project too, and hopefully it'll go rapidly as a result. Okay, I'm going to move on to NACTO, Complete Streets Design Standards. I did send a memo to the mayor, and I think I copied everybody, suggesting that the city adopt that as a standard and join NACTO. I have not heard, which I'm not surprised by that. He's got lots of stuff to think about right now, and probably joining NACTO isn't the first on his list. But he's been asked, and we'll see where it goes from there. Hopefully he'll say yes, and the city will join NACTO, and we'll adopt those standards formally. That'll be a good thing. There was a thing that I sent to Greg. I don't know if I sent it to anybody else about a NACTO. I call it a webinar, I guess, about city streets during this pandemic. I did not. It's ongoing right now, I expect. It started at 2, I believe. I obviously didn't look at it, but if there are things like that that NACTO has and are offering up, I'd be happy to share them with people. I'm on their mailing list, so I'll send stuff around if you're interested. Most of it's free, and you can just call in nowadays. And today's was Jeanette Sadekhan and someone else, like their director of NACTO. And Jeanette Sadekhan is always entertaining to watch. So next time I'll send them.
Just want to suggest that if at the end of each thing that you're sharing about, you could just ask if anybody has questions, then folks can raise their hand and then they then unmute themselves, because it's feels a little one way.
Okay. Yeah. And if you're on the phone and I can't see you, don't raise your hand, just speak out. How's that? So at the end of this NACTO, does anybody have any questions or comments? Okay. Access for All initiative. I'm going to move on to that. We met with the mayor to talk about this and to move it forward in our sidewalk, to move it forward to the Common Council, to the committees in the Common Council, and to the Common Council members to talk about how we pay for sidewalk repair, removal, and replacement. We started to develop some visual aids, and then the world closed down around us, so we have not done anything. We haven't moved it forward, which is also not surprising. And my expectation is that we will not be moving it forward until things calm down and settle out about what's going on with the impact of the shutdown and the pandemic. So what I would ask everyone to do, and one of the things that I did kind of half-heartedly, if you find pictures or if you see a place that has a wonderful example of a sidewalk that should be addressed, take a photograph and send it to Greg. He's going to get stuck doing this visual aid thing. And it's easy to find ones where the tree is the culprit. What would be more useful are ones where the tree is not the culprit, because it's really, I'm reluctant to get this into a tree versus sidewalk long-term conversation. I think we should look for all places where sidewalks are inadequate for various reasons. That said, does anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts?
This is Lorraine, Bob. Yes, I actually was wondering from what, I think it was Kristen who mentioned before about the UPAC sidewalks being removed. And I'm wondering what is being done with the Bluestone. Is there a bank being started again? I know that one was depleted. The city bank, Bluestone Bank, was pretty much depleted, but are those chunks being saved?
So there's currently Bluestone that goes all along much of the Broadway corridor. The Bluestone that is there now is actually, most of it is 20 to 30 years old. There were a couple of projects on Broadway that restored the sidewalks 20 or 30, maybe even 40 years ago now. And so most of that Bluestone is actually not historic. The Bluestone, there are a few pieces of Bluestone that are historic. The one that I know of is in front of Fiden's business, and that one is actually being left in place, and they're working around it. And the Bluestone in front of UPAC is going to be replaced, and we recently sourced, or the contractor sourced, that Bluestone. I would like to say that we went through quite a bit of email and attempt to source local bluestone from local quarries. It was very difficult. They're essentially the one local quarry that we thought we might be able to get bluestone from did not have enough, and wasn't able to provide it. So the bluestone that's going in front of UPAC is from Sullivan County. So
Okay.
that's how that's going.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. Okay.
I want to note, because I know this is a conversation that's happening out there, that the price difference between the concrete and the bluestone in the Broadway bid is 6 times. So I think the sidewalks were $400,000. I don't know, Greg, you might know the numbers better than I do in the bid. And so it would have added, like over $2 million to the Broadway project if we had done the entire thing in bluestone.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Patrick.
Thank you.
Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, interesting about the bluestone. Thank you for mentioning in front of the findings there, the historic bluestone. How does the city determine whether it's historic bluestone or not, and what will be removed and what won't be removed? Do you know?
Well, historic bluestone is something that has been there. I don't know if there's an actual time frame on it, but and Greg or Bob, feel free to jump in if you know the answer. I don't know if there's a time frame on it, but I can tell you what isn't historic bluestone, like what it was on Broadway and what is currently on a Beale, which was replaced 5 years ago. And you can sort of tell because it delaminates more quickly. So it kind of like sheds its top layer more quickly, where the historic bluestone is really hard and doesn't. And our current process for deciding what is removed or not is written in our code, which we, recently adopted, I think, maybe 3 years ago now, 2 years ago now. And
Yeah, I think 2 years, yeah.
yeah, so the code says that bluestone or that historic areas will, designated historic areas are essentially mandated to have bluestone, and areas that are outside of historic areas can use bluestone or concrete. And there's some language that sort of encourages, if there's very long stretches of bluestone, then the people who are working on replacing it would look to replace it with bluestone if possible. This is sort of why we needed phase 2 of the project, because right now homeowners are responsible for replacing the sidewalks, so they can choose whether they want to use bluestone or concrete if they're
That's
not
what-
in a.
Yeah, the revised code that the Common Council passed 2 years ago does allow either concrete or bluestone in areas that are outside the historic district. One of the differentiators between historic bluestone and modern bluestone is the size of the stones. If you look at the old stuff, it's very thick and very large stones, which were mined here locally, and obviously, as Kristen points out, is no longer taking place. So the thin stones and the smaller stones that you'll see in modern bluestone really are a different material and are not as durable, don't last as long as the old big stuff. The big stuff is hard to move, hard to work around. But so that's kind of that's how you can tell by looking at it without knowing the history.
Yeah, and just to second that, a lot of what our understanding at the city, what I've heard from Alan Aiden, who is very into historic bluestone, is the location of where it came from. Determining it in the field is one thing, as Bob said, with the size and the width, but a lot of that historic bluestone, what we consider in Kingston, comes from Wilbur, the old bluestone yard that was now is like Feeney's shipyard, that area.
And I just want to mention, we do still have a Bluestone bank. It's located behind the YMCA. I forgot the name of the street, but it's located back there. And the Bluestone that is on Broadway now will, what can be salvaged will, and they'll bring that to the Bluestone bank. The thing is that it's somewhat difficult to reuse that Bluestone as sidewalk material because of the different sizes and shapes. But if we had enough of it, we could hypothetically reuse it.
Good. Okay, any other comments, thoughts on this? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to move on to streets, trees policy. And I really don't have much to say there. We haven't done much work on it. Has anybody got any comments or thoughts or about where we are, where we should be going?
Well, I'll just say I put this item in the agenda because we spoke about it last time, because somebody had brought it up. And Brian Slack, who's not here, had said for us to look in phase 1 of the sidewalk code that we put in to see if there was language regarding street trees in that. And if there was, then we would just sort of leave it at that, as we've done the work in the past. And there is, and I had disseminated it. So I just wanted to put that on the agenda to readdress the fact that we have addressed sort of best practices in installing street trees for new projects in sidewalk phase 1 in the code.
And my memory is that has to do with construction of tree wells and construction of boxes, so you can minimize the root disruption to sidewalks adjacent to trees. I don't think we got into species. And I know that because I'm wandering around with my wife who hates these pears that smell awful. But that's another conversation. Sarah, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, the tree commission hasn't met for a while, though I did ask today if they wanted to have a meeting. But I think, as I mentioned last time, we are working on revising the tree list, like in the code, to and the calorie pears, which are very pretty when they flower, are not great street trees. They're not very sturdy. And so we are working on that, and we're trying, if I recall way back when we were meeting, to come up with a list that's kind of broken up by location. So you'll have kind of streets that are good on trees that are good on sidewalks, as opposed to trees that are good on lawns, as opposed to trees that are good in, because it's not, the location can often dictate which trees are best. So it's something that's being worked on.
Good. Thanks for including that, Greg. Any other comments? Parking in bike lanes. Kristen.
I do want to make a comment about the street tree removal on Broadway, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Share sort of the educational information about it, because I did see quite a bit of Facebook activity, and it's upsetting when all of the trees are gone in one fell swoop, which happened 2 weeks ago. However, I just want to remind everybody that we are going to be replacing the trees with, I think the numbers are 76, and there's 1,200 plants and 1,200 bushes, I think, and then other, let me just pull up the numbers right from the Broadway website. I'm muting you all. Okay. All right. So there's going to be, let's see, 76 new healthy street trees, 235 deciduous shrubs, and over 1,400 herbaceous plants that are replacing what was removed. A lot of what was there was not growing well. And we're putting in new bioswales, which will hypothetically allow the tree roots to grow and become healthier trees. And we also put in some, we did end up working with the tree commission. I think there's a lot of discussion out there that we didn't work with the tree commission, but we did work with the tree commission, and they did provide us with their recommended trees, and the engineers put those into the construction documents, the trees that the tree commission wanted, and you know, within the confines of planting them into a bioswale. And so some of the trees that are being planted will grow quite tall. And I think that in the end, the project will be much greener than what it was like before. So I just wanted to say that about Broadway. And I'll unmute Bob so he can.
Kristen, can you also unmute Lorraine again, and Claudette? I haven't heard from her. I don't know if she can unmute herself.
Okay.
I am here. I'm not muted, I don't think, but.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, for whatever reasons I couldn't unmute. I've been going along with everything, so everything's okay.
Great.
Okay.
I just in one more note about trees. I mean, I think that, you know, with the exception of the sycamores and maybe a couple of others, most of those trees on Broadway were in pretty sad shape. I think there was a kind of perfect storm of tree removal where all the trees, the really beautiful, healthy trees at the roundabout all came down. And then all the Broadway trees came down, and then all the Greenkill trees came down. And it distresses people to see that, you know, and a lot of us won't live to see the trees get big enough to replace the large trees that were there. So it gets emotional. It does, and it's not saying that it shouldn't happen or it doesn't have to happen, but it does. People do get emotional about this stuff. The land bank cut a tree down a few blocks from my house last week, and I have been like taking a lot of crap from people about that too. So it's people just forget it's an emotional thing. So
And trees always are. Good. Any other comments on trees or on?
I know, Bob, you can't see me. It's Andy. First of all, Sarah, thank you very much for serving on the tree commission. It's a frustrating position when you love trees, and it's not within our realm, but I do hope that the city starts to look at what other municipalities call heritage trees that would have protected the sycamores, because I agree, most of the trees were scrubbed. They weren't that great, but to see the ones that were healthy and were significant, and in my opinion, historical, it would have been nice to see some of them worked around, because those are history. So that was just my comment. And I think that's where a lot of people got so upset about it. Thank you.
Yeah, I also just want to mention that I know that, you know, so many came down at one time, and we were planning on doing a press release, but it all happened at the same time that coronavirus came out, and it just didn't seem like it would be a good idea it was the first week that coronavirus started happening and all those shutdowns were happening, and we just didn't feel like telling the public about that in a press release was going to be appropriately timed. So we didn't do that. I also just want to mention that the trees on Greenkill were Bradford pears, which from my understanding from the tree commission were an invasive species, and DOIT actually did a really good job of sitting down with the tree commission and going over what they would like there. And the trees that were on Greenkill will be very large shade trees because there was enough space to be able to do that. So I'm really excited. I mean, obviously it'll take years for them to grow, but the species that was chosen is, you know, for the long term, a large shade tree. So I'm really excited about, you know, what that will be in the future.
Good. All right, any other last comments before we move to parking? Okay, parking and bike lane. I don't know where that is. I guess there was I saw some traffic after our meeting, some email traffic, but I don't know whether I've not approached the police. So I'm not sure what the status is. Does anybody have any comments or thoughts or anything to add to that?
Well, just by observation, it's the parking on Hurley Avenue seems to have not been a problem, but I'm attributing that to the virus and rather than to anything else at the moment.
I suppose if we can leave it, if it reoccurs or if we have a resurfacing of the problem, we can focus on it and talk to the chief of police about it. I do see parking across sidewalks.
Oh yeah.
And that's probably something we should sit down and talk about with the chief, that it's illegal to park on a sidewalk.
Yeah.
And I did speak to Dan Quisnell, who works out of City Hall for parking enforcement. And I think one of the emails I forwarded was from him, and he's going to try to work on getting more specific language in the code about not parking in bike lanes, because I think now it isn't specifically specified. So we had a conversation about that. So when the time is right, I think they're going to try to move forward with that for the future, more as we have more bike lanes.
Yeah, it's important to keep them open. That's good. Any other thoughts about parking in bike lanes? Okay, I'm going to move on to storm drain grates. There was some traffic about that. We talked about it. In the olden days, the stream flow grates were a great idea, but bicyclists never liked them. So the standard is now reticulon, and I believe that's the city standard as well. Is that correct, Greg?
I think that's what Sean said on his project they're going to end up with for Hurley Ave. And then I guess going forward, we would try to keep consistent with that.
Is that, excuse me, Bob, is that something that needs to be added to the code, or is it just something they're going to do by practice?
My sense is they're going to do it by practice, and there's a couple of, it's a good thing to do for lots of reasons. They're lighter, you can pick them up easier. If you standardize on reticuline grates, you can interchange them. They're fabricated and not cast, but they're fabricated with modern technology. The cast stuff was what was best around when they did those years and years ago. And I think they're going to be more difficult to find, the cast ones. So I think reticuline is going to happen by default anyway. You won't be able to get the other stuff. And it's an improvement. Reticuline grates are good.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with that. I was just wondering whether or not it was something that needed to be addressed by code. Definitely they should be the newer ones, and they certainly should be at street level.
So I'd say it's better to have a conversation with Public Works, which I can do, and say, and engineering, just to reaffirm that that's what the direction they should be going. My fear about standardizing it in code is, if it changes, if they come up with something better, you don't want to be tied to, the old standard.
As long as Public Works is willing to do it and will do it, I agree.
Yeah, and they're cheaper too, the new ones. That's always good, you know that, Claudette.
I do.
All right, I don't have any new business. Should we have new business? Does anybody have anything that they want to add to the agenda as new business? Silence is deafening. It's good.
I think
as far
this.
This is almost like seeing real people. This is not bad. We have another scheduled meeting. I suppose we should play it by ear and see where we are with with everybody's social distancing by then, and if things develop. But my sense is things are going to be kind of slow in the near term. If everybody's okay, we'll leave it that we'll keep our meeting on the schedule, and if something exciting happens that we want to talk about, we'll meet. If not, we can cancel it, late in the game. Anybody else have any thoughts or comments on that?
I think we should try to on schedule as much as possible. So if we can either do go-to meeting or if we can meet somehow in person, we should try to stick to schedule as much as possible.
Yeah. Patrick, you had your hand up there for a minute.
Yeah, about the meeting schedule, whatever you guys decide is fine with me. Greg, could you please talk about the Broadway sinkholes when you get a chance?
Right. So you had sent an email asking about the status of those, and basically we're meeting tomorrow. Engineering is meeting with DPW and the mayor to sort of try to gauge the severity of the problem and how we're going to plan to move forward on those, what their impact might be on the streetscape project. But right now, we don't know exactly the subsurface condition, so that's something that we have to meet about, because there's a few different issues surrounding that. I guess probably the sinkhole that opened up drew your attention to this. Is that correct? Yeah. So I was out there with DPW, and that's an old storm drain under Broadway, and so it's been a little bit difficult inspecting it with our sewer camera, and for various reasons. And so we want to come up with a plan tomorrow with DPW and the mayor in terms of how we're going to move forward with that.
I noticed some depressions, not just there, but elsewhere on Broadway too. Little dips in the road, which indicate that the ground underneath has eroded. Have you seen them yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen depressions throughout Broadway and other places in the city. And so I don't know, Kristen, do you know? I mean, what I did see when they were excavating yesterday is that, the actual underlayment for the pavement is good. So I don't know if they did core samples for this project and what the results were, Kristen. If Patrick would like to hear from somebody from GPI in terms of just the road condition versus those very specific areas that we have to take a deeper look at.
I would just say at this time it's not really clear whether it's asphalt or under, the sewer system underneath. Through the design process, the GPI, I mean, they go through a normal analysis of all of the systems that are related to what they're designing, and through, the design took a long time. It took 4-5 years, and through all of that discovery period that GPI went through, both the engineering office and DPW had indicated that there weren't issues with the sewer underneath at that time. And so now we're in the middle of construction, and we had some idea that there might be some sewer issues. And so our strategy was to address them with DPW as we're going through this construction. And, right now we're trying to figure out what they actually are.
Well, I emailed the Ed and Ryan, and what they told me was it opened up as a small depression, and then it was maybe like a 2-foot hole, and then when they got into it, it appeared to be like a much larger hole, and then even when they got into that larger hole, it appeared to be even a larger hole. So this is some kind of sinkhole. This is not a road condition. This is material that's been washed away.
Yeah, that particular spot that you're talking about that's open right now, but I'm not sure about the other depressions on Broadway, and I don't think anybody's sure at this point. And so that
you can kind of, if you look at Greg looks at these things all the time. he knows what they look like, these depressions in the roadway. Greg, what do they usually turn out to be?
Well, it depends because on Broadway, some of them are over top of utilities. So some of them might be over top of storm. Some of them actually are not. And and typically when we're cameraing, and if we see a depression in the road over top of like a sanitary, you can expect like a leaky joint or a lot of times it's laterals that are improperly connected. And we did inspect the lower section from, say, Henry down to the underpass, and the sanitary and storm are in pretty good condition there. But you can see some dirt coming in from laterals, which is in the city of Kingston homeowner responsibility. So those are things we have to look into in terms of, is there political will for that, fixing those laterals and whatnot. But also, I would point out that some of the ones on Broadway are not over underground utilities. So that's why we need to take a closer look. And sometimes with the older sewers, in cleaning them too vigorously, you can actually open up seams and then cause more sinkholes. And so that's part of what we need to talk about tomorrow, and see, how do we even get a full view of what the one section where that cave-in happened, that's like a brick storm sewer. So that's particularly vulnerable to, if you go in there and you start scouring it, cleaning it, you might cause more problems than exist today.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to keep in mind. But there are other situations like where Ryan has sent us out to look at sinkholes on different streets, and we camera the main, and there's absolutely no problem with it at all. And so it could actually just be a soil issue, and a bedrock issue, possibly. I don't know. It's hard to tell sometimes when you're only just seeing the inside of a sanitary sewer.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, one thing just to keep in mind is, during the construction projects is when the sewers are going to get their heaviest load. This is when if they're going to fail, when there's heavy equipment out there, that's, that's when they're most likely that's going to be their highest load period. So hopefully we won't have a lot of these during the job, but hopefully we'll have none of them when we're done. It's a good thing to bring up. It's interesting. Any other last comments, announcements, events or updates? Another thing that I have not done, feeling guilty about after looking at the minutes, I didn't take Brian Slack's advice and talk to the chief about the traffic safety board. I'll do that before the next meeting, I hope, and see if I can encourage him to expand the membership and the attendance to maybe some of us other than law enforcement, because there's money there and I think we can get some stuff out of it. So we'll have to see what happens. Anything else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Okay. Do I have to second this? I don't know if you have to second those or not.
I'll second it.
Sarah, all right. Okay, Sarah said she would too. Okay. All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Stay safe, stay home, wear your face mask.
Everyone do the same.
Right, things will get better. Okay.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks.
Take care, bye.
Bye.
Oh, there's Andy. You finally see you. Okay. You were
Okay,
there.
I'm sorry, my network connection got lost, but you all still were able to meet?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay.
All right. I didn't wonder why Kristen didn't move. Okay, thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm trying to sign out.
I can't figure out how to do it either.
Yeah, I'm used to Zoom. Leave meeting. There.
Share your screen.